To arm or not to arm? Germany's leader and the U.S. president take opposing approaches to the crisis in Ukraine. Papal compassion. Diane Foley shares consolation she received from Pope Francis after her son was beheaded by terrorists. Music awards mixed with social agenda. Find out which issues took center stage at the Grammys. And impromptu stop. With no warning, Pope Francis visits a camp for refugees and homeless immigrants in Rome. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, February 9th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. German Chancellor Angela Merkel meets with President Obama at the White House today. They discuss the Islamic State and nuclear negotiations with Iran, but their main topic was Russian aggression in Ukraine. Susanne LaFrankie is here tonight with more.
Well, the question is, Brian, diplomacy or escalation? And should the U.S. and its European allies continue with diplomacy or consider arming Ukrainian forces against Russia? European leaders are strongly pushing for more diplomacy. So far, the White House agrees, but says other options are not off the table. Diplomacy, not war, is the message German Chancellor Angela Merkel delivered to the White House. Following a private meeting in the Oval Office, the two world leaders put on a unified front against Russian aggression in Ukraine. They say Putin's actions have only made the bond between the U.S. and Europe stronger.
There's going to continue to be a strong, unified response.
For now, Germany and the U.S. favor pursuing the peace plan to end the conflict. Merkel strongly opposes arming Ukraine, in part out of fear of sparking a proxy war with Russia.
I've always said I don't see a military solution to this conflict, but we have to put all our efforts in bringing about a diplomatic solution.
Merkel and French President Francois Hollande met with Ukrainian leaders and Russian President Vladimir Putin over the weekend. This morning, EU leaders arrived in Brussels, preparing for a face-to-face summit on Wednesday. More economic sanctions against Russia will be discussed. Russian-backed separatists continue launching rockets in eastern Ukraine. More than 5,300 people have been killed since fighting began last April. The deadly violence has dramatically increased in the past 2 weeks. Republican Senator John McCain says Putin doesn't want a diplomatic solution.
He may make tactical compromises here or there, but just as a prelude to further aggression. Mark my words.
So far, the U.S. has limited its aid to Ukraine to gas masks and radar equipment, but Obama says if diplomacy fails, he will consider sending weapons.
What other means can we put in place to change Mr. Putin's calculus? And the possibility of lethal defensive weapons is one of those options.
Also today, the president said he has very real differences with the Israeli prime minister over nuclear negotiations with Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu is calling for more sanctions on that nation. Today, Netanyahu said he will travel to the U.S. to speak to Congress next month about the dangers Iran imposes to Israel's existence. Mr. Obama says he will not meet with him during that visit. Brian.
Susanne LaFrankie, thank you. Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Syria's foreign minister says his country does not need outside help in battling terrorism. Today, the official criticized neighboring Jordan, which recently stepped up airstrikes against the Islamic State in Syria. He says the airstrikes are illegitimate because they have not been coordinated with the Syrian government. ISIS now controls about a third of Syria's territory. Jordan does not appear to be letting up on its airstrike campaign. Jordan's Air Force chief says they've launched more than 50 airstrikes against ISIS targets. The military there has vowed to respond to the brutal murder of a Jordanian pilot. Jordan warns the retaliation campaign will not stop until the terrorists are destroyed. The United Arab Emirates is also sending a squadron of F-16 fighters to help in that campaign. The parents of a 26-year-old American hostage say they are hopeful their daughter is still alive. ISIS militants claim Kayla Mueller of Prescott, Arizona, died in a Jordanian airstrike last week. The U.S. says it has no evidence of that. A family friend says her parents' nerves are absolutely frayed. Mueller is the only known U.S. hostage held by ISIS right now. If her death is confirmed, though, she would be the fourth American to die while being held by Islamic State terrorists. The mothers of 2 captured American journalists call on the White House to improve U.S. hostage policy. Tonight, Wyatt Goolsbee has part 2 of his sit-down interview with these Catholic moms. Wyatt?
Brian, both Diane Foley and Deborah Tice talked with us about the dangers reporters face in their work overseas. Their sons, James Foley and Austin Tice, were covering the conflict in Syria when they were captured. They told us since then they've relied on their Catholic faith for strength. Hundreds of Japanese are paying their respects to 2 of its citizens apparently killed by ISIS, Kenji Goto and Haruna Yukawa. The prayers and candles offered in remembrance for a journalist are a familiar scene for Diane Foley, whose son James was beheaded by ISIS in August.
The only reason I sit here is with God's grace. I mean, it's only through the Holy Spirit that either of us have the strength to be here.
Both Foley and Deborah Tice are advocating for the U.S. to improve its policy on hostage cases. Tice is hoping the U.S. can bring home her son Austin, who was captured in 2012 during the Syrian war and has been missing since. This YouTube video was the last time Austin was publicly seen. Foley agrees the issue has been put on the back burner.
There are important issues that just the average American hasn't even thought about.
Later this month, Tice and her husband will launch an awareness campaign using the phrase "Free Austin Tice." She says she is grateful for all the prayers.
We know for a fact that on every continent, including Antarctica, people are praying for Austin's safe return.
Both Foley and Tice say their faith in God has helped them to get through these tough times. One moment of hope for Foley, a phone call from Pope Francis last fall after the death of her son.
It was extraordinary because he had just lost some very close members of his family right around the date Jim was killed. So for him to think of us when 3 members of the family had died and his nephew was in critical care was extraordinary, truly extraordinary.
Foley says the Holy Father spoke through a translator, saying he was grieving with their family and that he was praying for them. Simple words, but words that provide hope.
It just made me so happy because our church has needed Pope Francis. I'm very grateful for him.
Both the Foley family and the Tice family have launched campaigns for their sons. The James Foley Legacy Foundation has a number of goals, including creating a support network for families of American hostages. On February 16th, the Tice family will launch the awareness campaign for Austin. Brian?
Amazing faith. Thank you for that great story, Wyatt. A story you'll only see here on EWTN News Nightly. This is not so good news. Alabama is now the 37th state to issue marriage license to same-sex couples. A federal judge last month determined the state's bans on so-called gay marriage were unconstitutional. Alabama's Attorney General fought to keep that order on hold, but today the U.S. Supreme Court denied his appeal. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented, saying justices are sending a signal they've already decided to declare gay and lesbian couples have a constitutional right to marry. Justice Antonin Scalia joined Thomas's dissent. Boko Haram terrorists are pushing their conflict from Nigeria into neighboring countries, kidnapping more than 30 people in Cameroon. The Islamic extremists have escalated their attacks in recent days, striking several times inside Cameroon and Niger. About 24,000 people running from Boko Haram now live in a Cameroon refugee camp. A woman who has seen Boko Haram kill with her own eyes voices her fear.
Maybe if I go to Nigeria now, maybe I will be killed. Because my father, they have killed my father, they have killed my brother, they have killed my mate. So I am afraid to go to Nigeria again because of this Boko Haram.
About 10,000 people have died at the hands of Boko Haram last year alone. Nearby countries pledged to send troops to help Nigeria stop this reign of terror. At least 25 people died in a riot last night outside a major soccer game in Egypt. It's not clear what sparked this latest riot. It was just 3 years ago that 74 people died ahead of a soccer match outside Cairo. Fans have only recently been allowed back at soccer matches. Egypt's most devoted soccer fans, known as ultras, are deeply politicized, and they're known to clash with police. Many participated in the country's 2011 uprising that forced former President Hosni Mubarak out of office. Britain's Prince Charles visits a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan during a trip to the Middle East. He chatted with refugees, even played some soccer with some of the younger ones. The prince was accompanied by Britain's International Development Minister. The UK plans to pitch in $150 million to help the displaced Syrians and their host communities. More than 3 million Syrians have fled their war-torn country since 2011. About 80,000 live in this one camp. Pope Francis made a surprise visit to a shanty town in Rome this weekend. People just came running when they saw the Holy Father arriving. Immigrants from Africa, Latin America, and Eastern Europe live in this settlement. It's known as the Rainbow Camp. They kissed his hand and thanked him for coming. He responded with blessings and, of course, kisses for the babies. Francis also greeted a family from Ukraine. He told them that he is praying for their country. Pope Francis then prayed the Our Father with a group of refugees in his native Spanish. Coming up, the stage is set for Saturday's elevation of 15 new cardinals, many from the peripheries of the church. And a Catholic Relief Services worker who died during the Pope's visit to the Philippines is remembered with a memorial mass in Baltimore. Pope Francis names Lieutenant Colonel Christoph Graf as the new commander of the Swiss Guard. Did you know that to be a Swiss Guard, a man must be a Swiss Catholic, younger than 30, unmarried, taller than 5'8", that would have left me out, and have attended Swiss military school, which I did not either, and I'm not Swiss, so. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Pope Francis met with his Council of Cardinals today for the 8th time. Now, these select church leaders are addressing the ongoing reform of the Roman Curia, which governs the Vatican. After these meetings conclude this week, 15 new cardinals will be created on Saturday. Nearly half of them are from the so-called mission territories, or peripheries, as Pope Francis would say. Cardinal Fernando Filoni, the prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, talked with our Alan Holdren.
What signal does Pope Francis want to give with the creation of cardinals from the mission territories, places like Myanmar, Tonga, Thailand, and Vietnam?
The presence of very far distant from us cardinals, like in the Pacific area or Asia area, is also making the church very universal, not only in name, but also in fact, in presence, in these different cultures which are enriching also the Cardinals College. Yeah.
These new cardinals will be participating in meetings with Pope Francis and the rest of the cardinals this week, speaking about the reform of the Curia here in Rome. What will be their contribution?
To the attention, their point of view. But on the same time, is also they are understanding better our work, how we do. And in this balance, understanding and the bringing, no, I think this is very useful for us to listen, being here, and for them to understand and reaching. So I think this is very good, this opportunity. Many cardinals also in the past, in the consistories, they asked to be in the most important moment of decisions, or to bring something, or to listen what is going on. It's not just what is reported by others, different-minded, but also what themselves could listen and see. So this opportunity, having this consistories, is responding to their desire, but on the same time giving an opportunity to all of them and to us too.
Alan Holdren from Rome. A new Gallup poll reveals Americans are increasingly dissatisfied with the nation's policies on abortion. The 35% of Americans who say they are content is the lowest since Gallup first started asking in 2001. Now, of those who are dissatisfied, twice as many want stricter abortion laws. 24% want those laws to be tougher. 12% want the current abortion laws to be less strict. Mallory Quigley is the communications director for the Susan B. Anthony List, a group dedicated to electing pro-life candidates. What do you think is behind this shift of attitude about abortion policy?
Well, I believe Gallup said that since President Obama took office, we've seen an even sharper decline in the level of satisfaction with the nation's abortion policies. And that's really no surprise when you look at what the administration has done on this issue, starting President Obama's first action in office to send taxpayer dollars overseas to fund abortion, Obamacare and the attack on conscience rights with the HHS mandate. So I think that it's really no surprise why this is. Coupled with the pro-life movement's educational efforts, as Americans continue to learn more about the reality of abortion in this country and policies don't change, we're going to see satisfaction go down and more unrest, which is as it should be.
So it doesn't surprise me that many of those who are dissatisfied are Republicans, but when you look at the Republican-controlled Congress and the recent stall of the 20-week abortion bill, are you at all optimistic that that will eventually pass or other pro-life legislation will pass in this Congress?
I'm optimistic. I mean, it certainly was disappointing. There's no way to get around that we didn't see a vote on the pain-capable bill back in January. But especially after a year of polling, which shows not just Republicans, but women, independents, young people, even almost a majority of Democrats supporting this bill. But the poll today really shows that Republicans have the most to lose, particularly among their primary voters come the next election cycle if they can't move this further down the court. So I'm hopeful.
They need to reach consensus. So as we look ahead to 2016, how will these life issues play into that election and that campaign?
Well, election after election, we see that pro-life candidates have the edge because there's an intensity on our side that simply the other side cannot replicate. And this issue is already starting to play a role. We've had 7 Republican presidential hopefuls send letters to Senator Graham supporting this pain-capable bill. Notably absent from that list are Governors Chris Christie and Scott Walker. They still have time to get on board, and they should, because the 2014 midterm showed us that candidates who articulate about this issue, who support these pro-life policies, that's where the victory goes, because these are not only morally responsible policies, but they're actually politically smart too.
So this confidence that the pro-life movement has comes from the truth, I guess, huh?
Oh, the truth will set you free.
That's right. Mallory Quigley with the Susan B. Anthony list. Thanks so much for visiting us again.
Thank you, Ryan.
Appreciate it. Well, tears flow today for a young woman accidentally killed during the Pope's Philippines visit last month. Jason Calvi takes us to a memorial mass celebrating her life today.
They've come to mourn someone they never met. 27-year-old Crystal Pedasis worked for Catholic Relief Services in the Philippines. The U.S. Bishop's global charity is rebuilding after Typhoon Haiyan devastated portions of the country in November 2013.
Even though she only worked for us for about 5 months, people knew her and loved her. She was always cheerful. She always had a smile for people. She included everyone,
including Pope Francis. Crystal volunteered to help during his Mass in a typhoon-hit area on January 17th. Witnesses say after Mass, a gust of wind toppled scaffolding down. In the rubble, the life of one rebuilding her country, an only child.
when people lose a spouse, one is widowed. When one loses a parent, one is an orphan. But there's no words for when a parent loses a child. So that whole sense of loss.
Pope Francis met Crystal's dad the day after the tragic accident. Today in Baltimore, Crystal's CRS family heard what her father said to the Pope.
It was a meaningful death, and I rejoice that she died serving other people.
These images here at the headquarters of Catholic Relief Services show the work that they continue now without Crystal, feeding the poor and giving drink to the thirsty. In Baltimore, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, politics and social issues mixed with the music at last night's Grammy Awards. And one of baseball's rarest autographs could be auctioned off for big money. This is National Marriage Week, so we reflect on advice offered to married couples by Pope Francis. Living together is an art. This daily journey has rules that can be summed up in these words, words which I have repeated many times to families. Please, or may I, thank you, and excuse me. What a practical Pope we have. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick, and British soul artist Sam Smith netted 4 awards at last night's Grammys. Politics and social issues also found their way to the stage. Backup singers raised their hands in Black Lives Matter solidarity pose during Beyoncé's rendition of Precious Lord, Take Me Home. Singers Prince, Pharrell Williams, and John Legend also referred to this summer's racial violence in Ferguson, Missouri. President Obama warned against domestic violence in a video message played during the show, and sex trafficking survivor Brooke Axtell put an exclamation point on the message with her spoken word performance. Dawn Hawkins is executive director of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Dawn, last year the Grammys were pushing gay marriage. This year domestic violence was the focus. Is the entertainment industry doing more to help or to hinder the objectification of women?
Well, it's great that they're talking about these issues, but the problem is that their actions completely are hypocritical with what they're saying. So they're doing a lot of things to push exploitation, to normalize the objectification of women, yet they're saying that we should do something to fight against this.
I think of some of the lyrics of music today are just really horrible. Hollywood star Chris Brown, he's now infamous for domestic abuse. He was there in the audience. Is this the right forum to advocate against sexual abuse?
Well, there's always, we should be talking about this everywhere, but it's ironic that right after they were talking about how we need to fight against domestic abuse, they nominated Chris Brown and R. Kelly, both known abusers of women, for awards. What message is that showing? We've seen a crackdown in sexual violence against women in the NFL. We should expect the entertainment industry to do the same.
It would have been interesting to see those guys speak out or at least acknowledge the problem. Let's turn to 50 Shades of Grey. It's going to be in theaters this week, over the next few days at least. Now, your organization says this is basically about domestic abuse. How so?
That's right. When you take away the glitz and the glamour, the fancy suits, the powerful job, this is really just a pornographic story about domestic violence and violence against women. We were Morality in Media. We just changed our name to the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in order to expose the connections between all these forms of exploitation. We've got 50 Shades of Grey, which is pornographic in and of itself, pushing sexual violence, making violence sexy, and now the media in a firestorm is making it okay and legitimizing it.
Thank God the National Center on Sexual Exploitation has a campaign against this. Tell us about it.
We do. If you go to 50shadesisabuse.com, we have talking point summaries, things you can do on social media. We're asking people, instead of going to the film, to donate to domestic violence shelters by using the hashtag $50, not 50 Shades. We have a boycott where we've combined with LifeSite News to issue a boycott that has almost 100,000 people who have signed. So there's a lot to do if you go to 50shadesisabuse.com.
And there's a social media component, right?
It's a huge social media component, and we invite all to join that. There are graphics and posts already ready for you to share.
All right, it's 50shadesisabuse.com. Dawn Hawkins, Executive Director of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thank you for bringing all this to our attention. We appreciate seeing you again, too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, North Carolina's Hall of Fame basketball coach Dean Smith is being remembered today. He died peacefully in his Chapel Hill home Saturday, just shy of his 84th birthday. The winningest coach in men's basketball history was also an innovator. At the urging of his pastor, Smith recruited black athletes in the 60s. He was known for his stance for civil rights. He tutored one of the game's greatest players, Michael Jordan. In poor health, Smith had kept a low profile in recent years. Dean Smith will be remembered. Well, the only known autograph photo of shoeless Joe Jackson is expected to bring 6 figures at auction. He was forever tainted by the Chicago White Sox fixing scandal of the 1919 World Series, the Black Sox Series they called it. The signed photo was taken in 1911 by a Cleveland newspaper photographer. The widow of a Cleveland man who bought the entire collection 5 years ago is putting the scrapbook up for sale. Jackson's autograph is extremely rare.
Joe Jackson was functionally illiterate. He signed very few items during his lifetime because it was difficult for him, and he was embarrassed about it.
The autographed Shoeless Joe photo and the entire scrapbook go on the auction block February 21st. We appreciate you joining us tonight. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, our entire team, I'm Brian Patrick. We wrap up tonight with pictures of the Bishop of Rome visiting parishioners after surprising the poor immigrants living in a nearby shantytown. Good night and God bless you.